So good evening, everybody. Let's start with cultivating our motivation. So it's often helpful to ask ourselves, why am I alive? How did I come to be alive? And from a Buddhist perspective, this is answered through saying that due to ignorance that misapprehends the nature of reality, then we began to crave to have a body, and in our case crave to be in contact with sense objects. And so through that craving, then wanting things, getting angry when we don't get what we want, creating karma, and then at the time of death, again craving more, and that helps to ripen the karma and throw the mind into another rebirth. So according to the actions we've done in the past, then our mind is attracted towards one body or another body, one realm of existence or another. And thus we get reborn. We live a life, again, with ignorance and afflictions, create more karma. The time of death, again, crave for another body. The mind gets attracted to another body, and we get born again. So there hasn't been any beginning to this. And if we want to stop this cycle, then we have to get rid of the ignorance, which is its fundamental source. And to do that, we need to understand the wisdom realizing reality. So the text we're studying is taking us in that direction, helping us to understand our wrong views, our ignorant ways of thinking, and to correct them. And so let's learn how to do this and then engage in the practice of doing it, not only for our own well-being, but so we can really actualize our spiritual potential, and with love and compassion for all other living beings, work for their benefit and lead them to full awakening as well. So let's have what we're doing tonight be one step on that journey. So our ignorance is quite deeply rooted, so deeply rooted that we don't even realize we're ignorant. We just take it for granted that, gee, whatever I perceive, whatever I apprehend is true. It exists the way it appears to me. And, without really examining how do things really exist. And so this text, Aryadeva's 400 stanzas, is getting us to examine our views and see if things really exist the way we assume they do. So the first chapter challenged our view of permanence, because we tend to look at things and see there they are, static, stationary. These circumstances I have now are always going to be this way. The people I know now are always going to be in my life, But when we think about it in any sort of way, things are actually in the state of constant flux, moment by moment. And even scientists tell us that, on a subatomic level, the electrons are rotating around a nucleus, and I don't know what all the other subatomic particles are doing, going in and out of existence or whatever, but they're constantly changing. So our view that things are stable, and secure, predictable, that's actually false when we examine things on a closer level. So the first chapter helped us do that. The second chapter challenged our view of what happiness is, because we usually think happiness is sense objects, and like, I want to have nice things to see and hear and taste and touch, and this is what's really going to make me happy, and prestige and reputation and a great love life and a great sex life and climbing up the corporate ladder and being successful and having all my wishes come true, and this is all really the way to have happiness. And in chapter 2 we began to examine that and saw that, well, actually it's not like that, that what we call happiness is in fact a low grade of suffering, that is removing another kind of discomfort that's bigger at the time. And so that helps us give up the mind that's chasing after sense objects, thinking, that happiness comes from outside. And it gets us to look inside and see that happiness really comes from inside, from transforming our own mind. And then chapter 3, which we're on now, we're almost at the very end of this chapter, is looking at another misconception we have, which is that the body is beautiful, it's pure, it's clean, it's, just this wonderful thing to have. And so in this chapter, what we've been doing is, looking at what the body really is, and how anything that comes in contact with our body we then consider dirty. If you put food in your mouth and chew it, then the food's dirty. If you use a towel, the towel's dirty. If you sleep on sheet, the sheets are dirty. If we wear clothes, the clothes are dirty. And we're always having to wash the outside of the body, but can we wash the inside of the body? Well, a little bit difficult. But what's the inside of the body? Unzip, open it up. What do you see? Yeah. It's not real gorgeous, is it? The lungs and the esophagus and the spleen and the liver and your intestines and the muscles and the bones and, all of our internal organs. And if we just, look at the inside of the body, it is not what we would consider clean and pure. And when we look at what comes out of our body, that isn't either, this beautiful food that we eat comes out as pee and poop, yeah? Or, you have earwax, or, the sleep in your eyes, or you sweat and then you stink, or the bottoms of your feet, get smelly, something excreted from there. We have mucus and phlegm, and everything that comes out of our body is really rather disgusting, isn't it? So it makes us ask a few questions. One is, why am I so attached to my body? Why do I cling on to it? So while it's good to, protect our body and keep it clean, we do so because it's the vehicle that we use for our Dharma practice. But to cling on to it just for any other reason aside to use it for Dharma practice doesn't really make much sense, because it's not this treasure chest of jewels. Okay? And then it makes us also look at, what's going on when I'm attracted to other people's bodies? Yeah? And, you look at somebody's body, oh, wow, that guy's really so good looking. Or whoever it is you're attached to, wow. But what is it we're really attached to? It's still the lungs and the spleen and the intestines and the stomach and the gallbladder and the muscles and the sinews. Yeah, is that what we want to hug and say, I love you so much? You know, when we really think about it, it's like, okay. So this third chapter is getting us to question our ability, our conception of the body, and, you know, what is it really? And why are we attached to our own, and why do we crave other people's bodies? Okay, so we're going to continue along that line. Okay, we stopped with verse 72, so we'll start with 73 today. So Aryadeva, Joblo, we have this guy named Joblo who pops up and he asks all these questions, you know. So Joblos say, okay, other people's bodies are unclean, but the uncleanness is removed by beautifying it with perfumes and flower garlands and everything like that. Right? Yeah, okay, the body's unclean, but you can change it, you know, decorate it, put on fragrant, you know, some kind of fragrant something, dress it in silk, you know, do the hair very nicely and, you know, put on makeup or whatever it is, you know. So Aryadeva says to Joblo, the verse reads, just as someone lacking a part is delighted with a substitute nose, desire holds that impurity is remedied by flowers and so forth. Okay, so what he's saying here is that a person whose nose has been cut off, yeah, is delighted with and very proud of an artificial golden substitute. Okay? Now, this sounds ridiculous, but I've seen somebody without a nose. You know, when I traveled in Asia, I remember in Afghanistan walking down the street and seeing one person without a nose, and just how shocking that was. And I imagine he would have been really happy to have a golden substitute nose. Okay? But what Aryadeva is saying is, you know, a person would be very proud of having that if they didn't have a nose. But attaching flowers and perfumes and silks and finery to the body as a means to remedy its foulness, and holding that will make the body clean, won't do so. Okay, so just the substitute golden nose, it doesn't make a real nose. So our adorning the body doesn't make the body gorgeous. Okay, so Aryadeva is quite direct. He says, in lustful, childish people who, because of their stupidity, don't see the body's nature, desire is stirred up by flowers, perfume, jewelry, and so forth, which are supposed to remove uncleanness, and because of these, they consider themselves and others clean. Okay, so if you've ever been to India, and our culture too, most cultures, but I think especially India and our culture, there's a certain sensuousness. Everything's very sensual, you know. And in India, the women wear these silks and bright colors and incredible gold, you know, thread woven and mirrors and glitter and so much jewelry and, you know, the red powder here and, you know, and then lots of perfume, sandalwood perfume, and, you know, they're really decked up, especially when you get married, you know. But then again, in our culture, it's the same way too, isn't it? You know, people are very attached to the clothes, and, you know, you got to get the right clothes that are in style, and, you know, kind of it's got to be really short here or really long there, and it's got to be flashy, and this has to match with that. And then you go out and get the perfume that's called samsara, right? And which is really samsara. And samsara means cyclic existence. Yeah. Okay, and then we decorate it, we put things in our hair and we dye our hair. We were talking today about how attached we get to our hair. Comb it this way, comb it this way. In India you put flowers in it. We put, all sorts of different ornaments and, pile it up or stretch it out or, it changes year by year. But we do all sorts of things. And we spend a whole lot of time trying to make ourselves look good, thinking that somehow that, covers up the foulness of the body. Yeah. So that somehow the fact that we sweat and we stink, and the body makes pee and poo and everything else, that's all covered up by all this way that we, dress up our body. And so Aryadeva is saying, you can put as much perfume and good clothes and ornaments as you want on, but the body is still what it is, isn't it? Yeah. So he says, through stupidity, that the childish beings desire this body that is like a festering sore disguised by garlands and clothes. He doesn't pull any punches. Yeah? And if you think of it, the body looks great now, but after our body is dead, then what do?
Rot.
Yeah. And we go, get it away from me. Ugh. Yeah? So if we were really inherently beautiful and clean, and, it would always be that way, but we look at it, yeah. Okay? So, decorating the body and thinking it makes it clean, it's like smearing butter on a cat's nose to make it think that even insipid food is rich and tasty. What do you think, Maitri?
She said a little butter on my nose would be fun.
Yeah. Oh, she's found something down there. Maybe some butter to put on her nose. Okay, then verse 74. Joe Blow is talking again, and he says, but there are fragrances and garlands and different beautiful things for which one inevitably feels desire. Like, when you see somebody decked out, you can't help it, And so Aryadeva says, it is inappropriate to call clean that towards which freedom from desire arises, nor is there anything which is a definitive cause of desire. Okay, so, Joe Blow's saying, okay, there's fragrances and jewelry and silks and all of this that is definitely going to make you have desire. And Aryadeva says, no, there's nothing that's a definite cause of desire, because for one thing, for one person it's one thing, for one person another. What one person finds attractive, another person doesn't. And he also says in the end, hopefully, as we develop our skill, our spiritual knowledge and wisdom, we'll all become free from desire. Okay? So if something were like just from its own side so desirable that you can't resist, then it would be impossible to be free of desire. Yeah? But people do become free of desire. So if they can do it, why can't we? Okay? So we see people who are free from desire for all sorts of different things. And arhats, the liberated beings, are free from desire towards the body. So it's inappropriate to call the body clean if the wise ones don't desire it. Okay? In other words, if the wise ones look at the body and thought, oh, this thing is so gorgeous and beautiful and I want it, then it would, really be a cause of desire. But the arhats have no desire for it, so it's inappropriate to call it clean. Okay? It's real helpful to me if people sit up when I teach, unless you're in great pain. Okay, then verse 75. Again, Joe Blow. Well, this time he's asking a good question. He says, is it possible for a single thing to comprise all four of these undistorted features? such as impermanence, unsatisfactoriness or dukkha, foulness or, uncleanliness, and no self. And so Aryadeva responds to this, saying, Joe Blow, finally you asked a good question. Yes, in fact, it is impossible for one thing to comprise all four of these undistorted features. Yeah. And so these four pertain to any kind of polluted thing. In other words, anything that's produced under the influence of ignorance and karma. Okay, so here's how he ties them together. This is very interesting. So whatever is a product is impermanent because it's momentary. So we've been through this before, okay? So if it's produced by causes and conditions, then it's impermanent. It doesn't last until the next moment because its nature is momentary. Because the causes and conditions change, then that thing itself is going to change. Okay? So whatever is impermanent, whatever is a product is impermanent because of being momentary. Whatever is impermanent is unclean because it produces aversion. Okay, so here we have to see how this works. Okay? So we have to see, whatever, if we look at, that's a syllogism, whatever is impermanent is unclean because it produces aversion. So let's look at the, does the reason apply to the subject? So whatever is impermanent produces aversion. Okay? Yeah, is that true? Well, what Aryadeva says is whatever is impermanent is going to decay, so yes, it will produce aversion. Our body is going to decay. What it decays into is yucky. Flowers are beautiful when you pick them, but they're momentary, they're going to decay. Who likes old flowers? Okay, food looks really nice when we get it, but it's momentary, it gets old. Yeah, you leave your food around for a few days and grows mold on it, and all sorts of stuff. It doesn't look so great. Okay, so whatever is impermanent is unclean because it produces aversion. And if it produces aversion, it's called unclean, Okay, so when something decays due to impermanence, we feel aversion towards it. If beautiful things were permanent, if beautiful things were permanent, they weren't momentary, then we'd never feel aversion for dead flowers or dead bodies. Okay, hold on. Okay, and the intelligent become free from desire because they see the nature of products. And here we're talking about products, things that are produced by ignorance, afflictions, and karma. It doesn't mean all products whatsoever, because like the Buddha's wisdom is also a product, it's also impermanent, but it's not produced under the influence of afflictions and karma. Okay? So since samsaric things are unsuitable, are unstable and unreliable, everything we get in samsara is unstable and unreliable. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, you get a job, is that job permanent? Are you going to have it forever? You get some money, are you going to have that money forever? Is that reliable? Is your bank account reliable? Is your income reliable? Yeah. Your relationships with people, are they totally reliable and stable? They're never going to change? If that were so, how come we're not still best friends with the people that we were best friends with in first grade? Yeah, if relationships didn't change, then we would still be best friends with the people who were our best friends in first grade. Yeah, but it's not like that. But relationships change, don't they? You know, and you can see you date somebody for a while and then the relationship changes and you don't. Yeah, you're close to somebody for a while and then you aren't close to them later on. So all these things are unstable and unreliable. So to think that they're going to give us any kind of everlasting peace and security is kind of our hallucination. Yeah? So we sit and we daydream about all sorts of fantastic things, don't we? You know, I'm going to do this, and you know, the guys who are into sports, I'm going to become this kind of athlete, and this and that, and this is going to happen, and this good time and that good time. And is what you daydream for sure going to happen? No. And even if it happened, is it going to last forever? No. And even if it lasted forever, would it make you happy, or would you get tired of it after a while? If you had to play video games 24/7, yeah? Then what? Are you going to be really happy the more video games you play? You know? 24/7 playing video games. What's going to happen after a while? Boredom, isn't it? It's like, ugh, you know, I want to do something else. I want to stretch. I want to go take a nap. I want to talk to a friend. You know, this isn't, you know, going to bring me everlasting happiness. Okay? So whatever is unclean is unsatisfactory because it harms. And whatever is unsatisfactory lacks some kind of concrete self. Okay? So this is how all these things are being tied together. Yeah? That whatever is impermanent is unclean. Whatever is unclean is unsatisfactory. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, if your body's unclean, if dead flowers are unclean, they're unsatisfactory, aren't they? They're not going to bring you everlasting bliss and happiness. And then all these things don't have any kind of nature of their own. Okay? They're all just, you know, dependent on other factors. Yeah? And none of these things, if we look at our body or our mental, you know, our mind, our moods, our feelings, none of these things are us. Yeah, they don't have a self in the sense of none of these things are our identity. Or put it this way, is your body you? Are you your body? No, you're not your body, are you? Yeah? Are you your moods? Are you your moods? Are you your thoughts? Am I my thoughts? Well, if I'm my thoughts, which thought am I?
All of them at once.
Well, no, you know, you can't be all of them at once, because there's only one you. So then you can only be one thought. Because if there's many thoughts, then there has to be many yous. Are you your thoughts? Are you your moods? Yeah? Are you your happiness? Are you your anger? Yeah? People say, I'm an angry person. Is that who they are? Their identity is anger? They are their anger? That's all they are? If that were true, then they would have to be angry all the time, nonstop. Yeah? To be anything, we have to be it all the time. Yeah. When we search around and try and find something that we can, draw a line around and say, oh, this for sure. Unchanging, permanent me, my soul. Right? My soul. Well, what in the world is your soul? Yeah, if you believe in a soul, what in the world is it? And what does your soul do that neither your body nor your mind do? Because whenever we say I, it's always in reference to our body, like I'm walking or I'm sleeping. Or we say I in reference to our mind. I'm thinking, I'm in a good mood, I'm in a bad mood. So if you have a soul that's not your body and not your mind, what in the world is it? Yeah? I mean, if there's an elephant in this room, we should be able to find it when we look for it. If there's a real soul, we should be able to identify what it is. Okay? Now, this doesn't mean that we don't exist at all. We're not saying that. We're not saying we don't exist. We clearly exist. We're here, right? Okay? But we don't exist in the way we appear to. That's what we're getting at. We don't exist in the way we appear. Just in the same way that things appear very stable to us, but they don't exist so 100% stable and predictable and permanent. And just as our body appears clean, it doesn't exist as clean. Okay? So what we're getting at is the way our mind perceives and conceives of things is not always accurate. Yeah? And, so again, don't believe everything you think, because it could be wrong. Okay? Okay, so Aryadeva continues, and he says, through contemplating the foulness and uncleanliness as exemplified by our body, develop aversion to cyclic existence, which is a situation governed by afflictions and polluted karma, where we also encounter, everything we encounter in cyclic existence is in a constant state of flux, and so thus leaves us disappointed at the end, because it's not going to last. So he's saying this, it's not to make us depressed, but for us to say, well, maybe this world of sense pleasures isn't the be-all and end-all of everything. Maybe our life has another purpose. Maybe there's another kind of happiness besides the happiness that we get from these unreliable sense objects. Maybe there's a happiness that comes from developing our own heart, from developing love and compassion, from generating wisdom, from purifying our mind. So instead of looking outside for happiness, he's saying, look inside. See, by purifying your mind and thinking about the nature of reality and developing compassion, see if you become happier. In other words, instead of seeking happiness outside, seek it inside. And if we do that, then wherever we go, whoever we're with, we can be happy. Because we take our mind with us. And if our mind is bright and pure and free of all these defilements, then wherever the mind is, we're going to be happy. Whereas when we're always looking outside for happiness, then we're in a constant battle with the rest of the world. Because we think, this is going to make me happy. I want this. But then how do I get it? And then we do this and that and the other thing to get it. But then you get it, but then sometimes it's not all you thought it was going to be. Or you get it and then it breaks. Or you get it and then it goes out of style. Or you get it and then your friend has something better. Yeah? So Aryadeva is saying, instead of looking for happiness outside, look for it in here. And instead of thinking suffering comes from outside, recognize that suffering comes from our own distorted thoughts, our own disturbing emotions, and that these are things that are not us, and we can be free from them. And so that's why the Buddha taught the teachings, is to help us to learn how to be free from these mental afflictions. So Aryadeva wrote a summary verse here for this chapter. It says, understanding that sentient beings are also bound like oneself in this unclean prison. In other words, it's not just me. This situation of things being impermanent and disappointing and unsatisfactory, this isn't just me that is experiencing it. All the living beings around me are experiencing this too. So he says, with energy generate compassion, observing transmigrators. Transmigrators being living beings who get born again and again in cyclic existence, and make effort to accomplish the highest awakening. Okay, so seeing that things are impermanent and are by nature unsatisfactory, that the body is unclean, then see this as the experience of all other living beings, and want to free yourself from it, and want to free all of them from it as well. And so develop compassion, wanting all living beings to be free from this situation. And then to actualize our compassion, then make efforts to attain, to completely purify our mind and develop all of our good qualities and attain the highest awakening, so that we'll have the wisdom, compassion, and skillful means to be of the greatest and most effective benefit for everybody else. Okay? So that's chapter 3. Chapter 4 is called Abandoning Arrogance. Anybody here have a problem with arrogance? Anybody? Oh, a few of you don't. This is very good. Ooh. Okay, so the antidote to destroying the seeds of the self-grasping ignorance, this ignorance that misapprehends how things exist, that's explained in the last 8 chapters of the book. So right now we're still on chapter 4. So here we're, since the antidote to uproot the ignorance is, we have to wait till chapter 9 to start that, chapters 9 through 16. Now we're going to talk about how to overcome manifest self-grasping. Okay? And since here he uses the example of a king, okay? But it could be anybody who's successful by our society standards. But he says, since kings are arrogant, grasping at I, big me, and mine, I'm the owner and controller of stuff, is explained mostly in reference to kings. But, this can refer to anybody, to any of us, in whatever situation we're in, where we're kind of the big shot in the situation. Okay? So you might be doing a project for school and you're the team leader. Or you might be playing sports and you're the team captain. Okay? Or you might be, have a business and you might be the the head of the business. Or you might be the director of the Dharma Center. Okay? So some position where you have what society recognizes as success. Okay? You score number 1 in your class, or you win a trophy, or whatever it is, okay? Yeah, and we've had successes, right? So let's look at our successes and see how our mind, goes about feeling successful. In other words, when we're successful, do we say, oh, that's fantastic, I really developed this good quality, now I can share it with other people? Now I can use it to make a positive contribution to society? Do we think like that? Not too often. We think, I'm successful. I'm successful. Does everybody notice it? I have power, I have wealth, I have success. I hope you notice it. Yeah? And I hope my family notices it, my brother and sisters notice it, so that then they'll know I'm really good, and I hope my friends notice it, and I hope the guy who beat me up when I was 3 years old notices it. I am successful now. Yeah. I mean, we're a little bit more discreet, but that's what's going on in the mind, huh? Okay, so verse 76, Aryadeva says, the person who is wise about worldly existence would be arrogant, thinking I, me, and mine, for all things equally belong to all embodied beings. Okay, so when we consider ourselves praiseworthy and successful and, king of the mountain, then the arrogance comes, thinking, I'm the owner. I'm the one who did it. Yeah, and these things are mine. And so this is a very gross form of self-grasping. Yeah, kind of having this big notion of me. Yeah, me, right. Me. I want this. It should be my way. This is mine. This is not yours. This is mine. We get like that, don't we? Huh? Okay. So this way of thinking does not occur in those who are wise, who correctly understand the nature of cyclic existence. These people are not going to get arrogant over wealth and power and success in cyclic existence. So generating arrogance could be appropriate if we had control over something at all times throughout all of our lives. Yeah. Is there anything that you have control over your whole life? Is there anything you have control over your whole life? No. Everything that at one time or another we possess, then later on it's either going to disintegrate into different parts that somebody else will possess, or maybe the whole object goes and is possessed by somebody else. So there's nothing that we have control over our whole lives. Does that make you feel a little strange? Some of us are control freaks. We want to control everything. Yeah? I want to control myself. I want to control you. I want to control the government. I want to control the cat, so the cat does what I want. I want to control everything. Can't control anything my whole lifetime. So, seeing that that's the case, what use is there in being arrogant? What do we have to be arrogant over if we don't have control over anything? And if the ownership of things is going to change, as time goes on. So we're kind of like actors who play the part of a king or of the successful one for a while. But then as an actor, then we again play another part, sometimes as a minister or as a householder or as a servant. Okay, So he's talking to Indian society that is very caste conscious. But we're also we're class, not caste conscious. But we're very class conscious, aren't we, in the US? Yeah. And so we play one role of one class for a while, then you get reborn, you're born in another class. Or maybe you don't even have to wait to get reborn. The stock market goes down and there you are in another class. Yeah? Or the stock market goes up. Or things are changing like this all the time. So some people, they just feel real kind of smug about their wealth. But, the wealth can go like that. Okay. I mean, you look at people, look at people in Syria, for example, right now. Yeah, people who are middle class in Syria who are now refugees, who have nothing. Even upper class people, there's fighting in Damascus, and some of their houses may have been destroyed. Yeah, so whatever class we are, it's not certain, it's not sure. Yeah, we don't have control. So being arrogant is really inappropriate. Yeah. Okay, verse 77. So here he's talking to the king, okay? So first Job Low says, since all worldly enterprises are under the king's control, arrogance is appropriate. So the king's the big shot. All the worldly enterprises have to meet with the king's approval. So the king being arrogant is appropriate because everybody else does need to seek his approval. So Aryadeva says, he's talking to the king here, he says, society's servant, paid with a sixth part. Why are you so arrogant? Your becoming the agent of actions depends on being placed in control. So what he's saying here is that in olden times, when people began to steal each other's crops, there began to be theft, and violation of ownership. Then for protection, people got together. They gave a sixth of their income to one person and called that person the king, but the king's job was to protect the crops from theft. Okay, so Aryadeva is saying that the king is the person that the people appointed to do this job, and the king is actually getting paid a sixth of the income. We say the king is taxing the subjects, but it's actually the subjects giving some of their income, hiring the king to do their job. So actually, how the king is the servant of the people. The king isn't the ruler and the controller, and where everybody has to seek his permission. He's actually a servant. Yeah? And so if you look at it this way, all of our politicians should see themselves as our servants. Yeah. They do to the extent that they want to convince us to vote for them. But then once we do, then they do what they want. Yeah. But really, politicians are the servants of people. The president is the servant of the people. Yeah. The people who work in the cabinet are the servant of the people. There's no reason to feel arrogant when, the people are paying you and hiring you to do this job. Okay? So it's not appropriate at all to proclaim that you control all activities. And, we always look at people in power and say, oh, they have so much control, they can do whatever they want. Actually, they can't. Because if we don't give them the power, then they don't have it. Yeah? And even, most of us have studied European history at least. So there were kings. When the people decided that they didn't want to give the power to the king, they had a revolution. Yeah, the king is not inherently a king forever and ever. Yeah, the people decided, pooey, we want a different form of government. Okay, so Aryadeva is saying to the king, you're becoming an agent who's able to do different actions, depends upon your being placed in control and appointed as the agent by the people. Yeah. So even some big CEO in a company is beholden to the board of the company. And the board is beholden to the stock shareholders. Yeah. And the shareholders are beholden to the market forces. Yeah. So to sit and think, I'm a CEO, I can do anything I want, is really rather inappropriate, because you depend on all the people who are working in the country, in the company. And if you don't make the people working in your company happy, they're going to quit, or they're going to go on strike. Yeah? So there's no reason for you to be arrogant, because you're really, you're just appointed as a job to do that job. Sometimes people look at me and, oh, you're the abbess. You can do anything you want in the monastery. No, you guys, stage revolutions from time to time. No, we don't like that policy. Yeah. So as a leader, you can't do whatever you want. You have to be sensitive to whoever it is you're trying to lead. You don't have absolute authority over everybody. Because all people have to do is complain, and then you have to rethink what you're doing. Okay, so Aryadeva gives the example that it's inappropriate for a servant to feel arrogant when his master delegates a task to him. Okay, so though the master depends on the servant to do it, that doesn't justify arrogance on the servant's part. So the analogy here is that the master are the people, and the servant is the king. Yeah. Okay. So we have a little bit of time for questions, comments. Yeah.
So is anything forever?
When you mean forever, what do you mean? That it lasts?
You said nothing is permanent. Is
Yeah.
anything permanent?
Yeah, there are things that are permanent. And also permanent, put it this way, permanent isn't the same as eternal. Okay? In Buddhism, when we use the words permanent and impermanent, it's a little bit different than our normal language. Okay? So, for example, once you become a Buddha, you're never going to become an ordinary being again. Your awakening is eternal. That's, you're not going to lose that.
You can change as a Buddha, right? Not just continuously change.
Yeah, a Buddha's continuously changing. Yeah.
So are they permanent if they continuously change?
No, they're impermanent. I mean, like a Buddha's mind, because a Buddha's mind's perceiving different things each moment, so Buddha's mind is impermanent. But the state of Buddhahood is eternal. Okay? Or we could say even now, just the continuity of our mind is eternal. Our mind is never going to cease. There's always one moment of consciousness acting as a cause for the next moment of consciousness. Even at the time of death, one moment acts as a cause for the next moment of mind. So our mind is eternal, even though our mind changes moment by moment.
And when you said, I I don't remember your word exactly, but it was something along the lines of, where is your soul? You know?
I was asking, yeah, do you have a soul?
Yeah.
Do you have a soul?
See, I'm not sure, because I don't know where it is, but I also don't know what my mind is.
Uh-huh.
So that doesn't mean I don't have a mind.
Yeah. Does everything that exists have to have a physical location?
No, of course not.
No. So if you don't know where your mind is, your mind can still exist even though it doesn't have a physical location.
As with your soul, right?
Well, you have to ask yourself, what is your soul?
What is your mind?
Your mind is what we say is clear and knowing. It's something formless that can reflect and engage with objects.
Okay.
Yeah, our consciousness or our mind is what perceives and feels and experiences and apprehends and cognizes and perceives.
So, what is the part of you that is for, you know how you continuously are reborn?
Yeah.
What is that part?
Well, the mind, which is changing moment by moment by moment, that continuity continues into the next life. But we can't say that it's permanent because it's not the same in each moment.
Yeah.
It's changing. Yeah. So you can't really, can you find something that's saying, this is me, permanent, unchanging me?
Would you say that the mind is eternal and the mind is one?
No, the mind is composed of many moments of many moments of mind.
Then it's one continuum.
It's one continuum, but one continuum is actually many, many
Yeah.
small things.
And my question then is, meanwhile we are in the samsara,
Mhm.
we have different bodies,
Yeah.
but one mind stream.
One mind stream, but the mind stream is only a label that is being given on all these different moments of mind.
Yeah. When we get the enlightenment,
Mm-hmm.
how our minds continue to be one stream?
Yeah, it's... No, it's still one continuum. When we're enlightened, there's still just one continuum of our mind. Yeah. Our mind, when we become enlightened, has the same realizations as everybody else. And apprehends, or not the same realizations of everybody else, the same realizations as all the other Buddhas. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When we become enlightened, our mind is cognizes and perceives the same thing as all the other Buddhas. Yeah. But it's still, it's not like we all merge and become one cosmic mind. It's not like that. Yeah.
Is the soul what we think is the mind stream?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. What do you think the soul is? And is there a soul?
What do you call soul? What is it?
That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah. I think that
Yeah. We all grew up with this idea of soul. What is it?
I think it's like the piece of you that is all like the mental continuum. I think they're the same. I think they're just used differently.
Yeah, except a soul, when they usually talk about a soul, it's something that doesn't change. It's always you. But when you get incarnated, you're not the same, in your next life, you're not going to be Imani.
No, yeah, I will not.
Yeah. And in your previous life, you weren't either. So there's a continuum from one life to the other, but it's not exactly the same. And even from, childhood to adulthood, are you the same?
Even from this moment to the next.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a question about chapter 3.
Uh-huh.
So you said that whatever is impermanent, and in this example you used the body, is unclean because it produces aversion, because it will decay.
Yeah.
And that creates within us as humans a natural aversion.
Mm-hmm.
But when the body decays
Mm-hmm.
and it goes into the ground and becomes another form and helps create something beautiful like a flower or corn. And earlier we were talking about the piece of bread that it takes people, so many people to harvest it, and so much goes into it to create that piece of bread. But in that way, that continuum of the body, in a way, creates happiness in itself, which wouldn't mean it's averted at all. The reason that we think it's unclean is just our own aversion to the idea of organs or death and decomposition. So the reason why we think it's unclean is because we think it's unclean. Just like we look at people in different countries eating bugs, and we think, oh, I mean, you don't eat bugs.
Right. Yeah.
Stereotypical American viewpoint, oh, that's disgusting, they eat bugs, we have an aversion to that.
Yeah.
But to them, it's something beautiful, it's a source of nutrient.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what my question is, I don't understand why we have to negate the body and say that, it's dirty or defiled just to enhance or put on a pedestal the mind or the stream of consciousness. Because just as the stream of consciousness changes as we are reborn, our body in form, even though it changes, it's still out there. Parts of this physical shell may no longer be cast, it is still scattered. So, like I said, I think my question is the body really unclean?
Okay. So, is the body really unclean? We wouldn't say it's inherently unclean. Okay? Wouldn't say that's its inherent nature. But we would say from a common conventional perspective, yeah, our body, if you open it up, we don't all go, wow, that looks gorgeous. And everything that comes out of our body, just from one culture to another, people go, ugh. Okay? So just on a regular conventional level, the way if we look at what the body is, it's not, somehow this fantastic spick and span pure thing. Yeah. And what we're doing here, the reason we're thinking about this is because right now we're so attached to our body, and that attachment to our body causes us a lot of grief and a lot of pain. Because when we're attached to this body, at the time of death, the consciousness has to separate from the body. There's no choice. Yeah? No choice. And the more we're attached to something, the more difficult it is to separate from it. And so this is why people often, at the time of death, have a really hard time dying, and why there's a lot of fear and trepidation, because they have to separate from this thing that they've just been clinging to since they've been born. Yeah? So that attachment causes a lot of grief and a lot of pain. Whereas somebody who isn't attached to the body still has the body, and keeps it healthy and, uses it to improve the state of their mind. But then when the time comes to die, it's like moving out. We have that verse that the consciousness is like a guest in the guest house. So when we die, then it's just like, the mind is like the guest moving to another guest house. It's not a big deal. The mind continues on. It takes another body without attachment. Okay. And then the thing is also, if we're not attached to this kind of body, because the kind of body we have now gets old and sick and dies. That's its nature. There's nobody that can avoid aging, sickness, and death. Doesn't matter how famous you are, how rich you are, what social class you are, aging, sickness, and death is there for everybody. It's a big equalizer. So the more we're attached to this kind of body, then the more we have to experience aging, sickness, and death. If we're not attached to this body, and we have great compassion for all living beings, then we can choose to take a body out of compassion to be of benefit to other living beings. And when we do that, then our mind isn't attached to this body, so we don't suffer. You know, the body may still, because it's changing, get old and sick and die, but because we don't have attachment to it, we're not going to suffer when it does. And instead we'll be able to use our life really to benefit all living beings. Okay? Does it sound, that sounds better than like putting flowers in our hair and perfume on and trying to make this body pure, doesn't it? Yeah, much more meaningful. Yeah.
You mentioned that at the time of death, the consciousness separates from the body,
Uh-huh.
and also that the consciousness is formless and knowing. It doesn't necessarily need a location to exist.
Yeah.
And there's this phenomena that when someone dies and one of the organs has been donated to someone else, sometimes that person will exhibit characteristics of the previous organ owner.
Do they?
Yeah, they sometimes pick up habits, either physical habits or speech patterns or preferences for food, colors, activities.
I haven't heard that. We should ask, we have a friend, Bill, who had his lung transplant, and see. Huh.
Say that about heart transplants.
Yeah? Oh, really? Well, I haven't heard that at all. But, you know, I wonder how they do that and how they measure that. Like, does the person with... But wait a minute, they don't usually transplant the whole heart. There aren't Are there whole heart transplants?
Yeah.
Really? The whole heart?
They do.
Okay. So they're saying that they transplant the whole heart and then you take on personality characteristics?
It is a phenomena that has been observed and reported.
Not always.
Okay.
but
Yeah.
not always.
Yeah, okay. Because I would be very curious with that. Because often, like in Bill's case, he doesn't know who the person was who gave him the lungs.
Right.
And so often you get an organ, you don't know who it was who gave it to you. So you would have to really see if, you know, kind of what were the characteristics of the person who gave it and what are, you know, how you're feeling. And really, I think you'd have to really test it out and do some close observation there.
Yeah, there's a heart surgeon who's written about this kind of a lot, but I haven't tracked it in years.
That's something my follow-up question on that. If the mind is formless and doesn't require a specific location to function, then could it be said that the mind actually permeates our entire body or all space, even in that sense? As we talk about the five elements as being all pervasive, is the mind itself all pervasive, but maybe limited by a deep-rooted ignorance?
Yeah, I think
one location.
I think the mind has the potential to be all pervasive. A Buddhist mind certainly is. Yeah, but when you're ignorant and you get attached to something, you hold it. Yeah, and the ignorance holds us, you know, to the body, holds the mind to the body. This will be the last question.
When I listen to those teachings, what I realize is I'm not aware of my attachment of my body.
Yeah.
But those teachings makes me realize, wow, there's a big attachment that you are not aware of. That I get it, but I haven't experienced it. And I know I'm in danger because I don't know that. I don't have the experience of it. Of knowing that attachment, that the day I'm going to die, how I'm going to freak out, or whatever I'm going to do.
Yeah. Well, one way to become more aware of that attachment is when you're threatened with danger. Yeah. Watch how the mind regards the body when you have some a physical threat of danger. Yeah. Yeah. Or if you were going to have your hand cut off, or even if you were going to go in for surgery, you know, how the mind responds to, wait a minute.
I had an experience when I was in 2010. We were working on the little cabin, and I was on the step and ladder, and I almost dropped. And she told me, "That's yourself."
Yeah.